Driving up here, I was really getting angry. A spirit of anger and frustration, and just going over many different topics in my mind and so on and so forth. And then I passed this sign over here of New Providence. You all see that little town? Little sign that said New Providence? So I said, that's a neat name for a town. Hey Siri, give me the definition of providence. Protection under God. Is that not what our country was founded upon? One nation under God, providence. George Washington talked about providence. John Adams talked about providence. And we've lost our way. But how cool is that that is a staple or a cornerstone or a thread of the fabric of this nation, is it not? Mm-hmm. So I started to think more. Well, Providence, all right. Providence, Rhode Island, was established as a colony at the beginning, right, by Roger Williams. Y'all remember Roger Williams? He was actually, Jefferson gets the credit for freedom of speech and freedom of religion and so on and so forth, right? And the founders that actually wrote our Constitution and the Declaration, those individuals get that credit. But Roger Williams, back in 1636, founded his colony that truly lived in and under God's wing. It's amazing. So I started doing a little bit more research, and he had Indians and blacks and whites and Spaniards and Portuguese, you know, and all in this one colony, working side by side, treating each other equal, that truly lived Martin Luther King's dream, right? By the content of character and the sense of and Tim pointed out at the beginning of his talk about it is commanded to us, not the government, to take care of our widows and orphans, right? It's just amazing. But we forgot about that. Now, from Plymouth Rock to the signing of the Constitution, how many years do you think was between that? Was it, okay, the Pilgrims landed, okay, we had our colonies, and then we wrote the Constitution, right? Just a couple years? 180 years between Plymouth Rock and the signing of the Constitution of the United States. Between that time, we tried every type of government. We tried socialism, communism. We even tried Christian communism. None of it worked. Until Madison sat down with Jefferson and some other founders, and they came up with what George Washington termed the Great American Experiment. And that's exactly what we are. It's never been done before, and that's exactly why we prosper more than any other nation on this planet. Am I right? So, last week we were at the Iowa Grassroots Coalition meeting, and I had a long presentation, but there's a couple slides that I wanted to make sure that I touch on again. We the people. No other three words in the history of mankind has influenced and given hope more than those three words for individuals, for nations, than we the people. Our great American experiment, right? We the people are the Tea Party movement. We the people are the conservative base. We the people are the grassroots of this country. And that's where I want to kind of go here before I talk about the Tea Party Patriots, if that's okay, because it all ties in together, okay? One thing we learned with the Iowa Grassroots Coalition, I'm a co-founder of the Iowa Grassroots Coalition, was in 2012, we almost killed ourselves, groups across this country. We started off with 13 groups, quickly grew to 47 groups within the Tea Party movement here in Iowa, the Iowa Grassroots Coalition. And we were all on the same page on everything. Someone talks about life, yeah. Someone talks about taxes, yeah. You know, and we were all on the same page of what we wanted. And then the candidacies came out. And then the Ron Paulites was fighting the Michelle Bachmans and the, whoever else. And we began to get into my daddy bigger than your daddy syndrome, right? That candidate worship, thinking that this individual was the one that's going to lead us to the golden city on the hill. George Washington, somebody, I think it was you, was telling me about, remind me this morning about George Washington saying, I don't want to be king, right? But I'll be president. Because of we the people. It's something different. It's no longer that candidate that's in charge. It's no longer that individual. I do this sometimes. And I got it out of my truck. I should have brought it in. But the flag. When the flag's folded in a triangle, do we know why? The flag is folded into a triangle because it represents the first tri-corner hat of the very first citizens of this country that fought and died for the freedoms of which we live for, right? And if you were to represent this new government as a triangle, should it be represented this way? No. Because this is a single person up here and we the people are down here, right? That's a hierarchy, as a kingdom. That's fascism and all the other wrong kinds of governments, right? It should be represented like this. Because we the people, from our own, we choose elected individuals, citizens, to do the work of the authority of our government, to come down here to do the work for that. In our Congress, in our state houses, and so on and so forth. We are the authority. We are in charge. We don't elect them so that they can go and tell us and govern us this way, correct? So this is what's lacking, is our understanding of our duties to hold accountable those. And Tim did a good job this morning talking about that. So in 2012, Iowa Grassroots Coalition saw what was happening. So we knew for the 2016 election that we needed to come up with something. So we came up with this candidate assessment card. And nowhere on here is there a name for your candidate. Nowhere. Right? So on here, you as an individual in 3 different areas assess each one of the candidates running for that position. But we asked everybody. I went all over the state of Iowa and asked you guys, please write down what your principles are. What you're fighting for. If it's life, write that down. That's my passion. Your top 3 things. And then do your assessment of each one of the candidates equally and honestly. And score them. Then with all the candidates that's running for that seat, right, to do the people's will, you'll put them in order. Candidate X, candidate Y, candidate Z, right? So you have a 1, 2, or 3. And the key to this whole process, and we put it on the back, was rule number 4. If your candidate, your number 1, drops out of the race or gets out, don't go home. Because we have one enemy, the progressive movement. We have one enemy, those that are trying to dismantle the Constitution of the United States. Those that are trying to dismantle the providence of which we are founded upon. Right? So take off your number 1 shirt, pull your number 1 yard sign out of the yard, and grab that number 2 on your list. So Kay's number 2 might be my number 6. Right. And we're both conservatives, but that's okay. And I'm going to respect her to put on her number 2 and campaign just as hard for her number 2 while I'm still campaigning for my number 1. And vice versa, until all the way down till the primary is almost over. Yes, and Kay and I are in each other's face and debating. No, this is why this is better. This is why. Because we know he or she's going to do this and do that or whatever. It's primary season. That's what it's about, right? And then if she tells me something about her candidate that I didn't know about so I'm going to go ask my candidate, which might change this a little bit, right? That's we the people using each other and to learn from each other and so on and so forth of what's important. Might change my principles around a little bit. But then after the primary, whoever wins the general, you're still doing the number 4. You take off that shirt of your last guy or gal, and you put on that one shirt because you're still fighting the progressive movement. You're still fighting that force that is eating away and eroding the principles of which we all are on the same page about. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. The candidate worship is killing us. And we're here for Cruz today, and we all know, we've assessed this, right? And during the 2016 election, he won hands down with the Iowa Grassroots Coalition polling. Yeah. Because we asked everybody to turn those in, right? But then, and it worked all the way up to the caucus. And that's where I'm leading into next, is not one rhino, not one establishment, not one of what I label the progressive Republicans made the top 5. Not one of all those 14 to 16 candidates, not one of those establishments made the top 5 here in Iowa. Not even close. So it worked until the caucus. And then the caucus, and it was never Trumpers and never Cruisers and oh my God. It was all over again, right? We threw everything else up just out the window, our principles and everything else that we were fighting for. Now it's just me against Kay. And vice versa. And I'm sorry, I didn't even do that because that's where I'm talking. All right, so, well, I did, but I did. All right, so I got here, and I got to put on my eyeballs. And I'm not going to read it all, but you see, I got a huge list over here, right? So I put like items together. Conservatives, libertarians, constitutionalists. All right? We're all within our movement. We're all fighting the progressive front. Let's embrace each other. If Tim tells me he's a libertarian and I'm not a libertarian, I shouldn't disown Tim. If life isn't my #1 issue and taxes are, I shouldn't disown and not work with Tim. All right? Because we're still fighting the same monster. All right. So I got here church denominations. So if they're Baptists, are doing one way, Catholics doing another way, or Protestant, or whatever. Same mindset. I got here Americans for Prosperity, Eagle Forum, Tea Party Patriots, Freedom Works. All national groups. All good groups. With separate focuses on fighting the fight. Don't say, well, I like Tea Party Patriots, but hate Freedom Works. Because we're in competition with each other. We're hurting each other. Right? Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Simon Conway, Tamara Scott. These are all voices on the radio for our side, on our armed forces, if you will. Okay? Tea Party groups, all the different ones, 912 groups, SOAR groups. In the Iowa Grassroots Coalition, we have done that really well. We embraced all these different groups, you know, and just because you don't have Tea Party in your name doesn't mean you're not part of us, or just because you're not Tea Party in your name, you're still a part of the